Thank you for being here with us this morning, whether you're joining us in the pews or online. I'm Alejandra Posada, your worship associate for today. I currently serve the congregation as a member of the Stewardship Committee, which you'll hear a little more about in a few minutes, the Worship Committee, and the Social Action Council. We are fortunate to have the Reverend Dan King with us here today as our guest minister. Dan was selected as Minister Emeritus after serving our neighbors at both Thoreau in Richmond and First UU in Houston. He returns to our pulpit this morning as guest minister for a 16th appearance since his retirement 5 years ago. Reverend Dan's undergraduate degree is from Rice, and he also did graduate work in law and management at UT Austin and pursued a very legal career for 20 years before attending UU Seminary at Starr King 30 years ago. Dan and Nina, his partner of 50 years, returned to Texas in 2017 to serve as helpful grandparents with their daughter's family. Please join me in welcoming Reverend Dan. Thank you. Okay. Before we get started, we have several announcements today. First, an announcement from our Social Action Council. On Tuesday, October 22nd, from 6 to 8 p.m., Texas UU Justice Ministry is sponsoring a phone bank to call Texas voters and get out the vote. You will call from home, but you will not use your personal phone to call. You can see our weekly newsletter, the e-blast, for details on how to sign up, or you can probably touch base with Janet Dawson on that as well. Yeah, or see Janet or the e-blast if you're interested in participating in that. Next, an announcement from the lay pastoral ministry team. That some of you may have attended the end-of-life session last week. The second session of the end-of-life planning series will take place on October 19th from 1 to 4. And even if you couldn't attend the first session, you're welcome to attend the second session. Again, there's more information in the e-blast. Today, directly after the service, there will be a listening session in preparation for next Sunday's congregational meeting. The topic of the listening session and the congregational meeting next week will be regarding the confirmation of the president, vice president, and new trustee to our board for the remainder of 2024, as well as a proposed constitutional amendment. So if you have a moment to stay or have questions about that, please stay after the service, and we will answer your questions, hopefully. We'd like lunch bunch today. Will be at 12:15 at Leaf and Grain, which is at 5779 San Felipe. This is an informal gathering for fellowship and to continue conversations. All are welcome to join, and if you're still a little new here, or even if it's your first time here, we'd love for you to come as well. Between the service and lunch bunch, in addition to the listening session, there will be coffee and snacks out in the gathering place to continue conversation and fellowship. We would especially like to welcome our visitors this morning. We're very happy you have chosen to include this place on your spiritual journey. You should have been handed a welcome packet when you arrived. If you did not, we're sorry for the oversight. Please feel free to ask for one as you exit the sanctuary this morning. The welcome kit contains a yellow card, just like the ones you might see in the seat back in your pew. If you fill that out, we'll put you on our twice weekly mailing list. And I can tell you from my own experience, it is just twice weekly. You're not going to be flooded with emails. But that can help you keep connected with what's going on here at the church. So whenever you're ready to take that step, please feel free to fill out the card and leave it in the offering plates or box here at the offering plates here at the front, or the offering box at the back. And welcome to Emerson. We are delighted that you're here. Finally, as you know, last weekend we launched our 2025 stewardship campaign, Thriving in Heart and Mind. At this time, I'd like to invite our acting board president, Hillary Ritz, to make some remarks on the topic.
Good morning. Morning. Oh, that was loud. So I just wanted to make one quick but important statement about this year's stewardship campaign. This is the same point I made in my letter in the stewardship brochure this year. And it is this: most of you already know by now that Emerson has been so fortunate to be the recipient of $1 million donation. That gift is amazing and incredibly appreciated, and we thank the givers of that donation. And as you look at your pledge card this year and contemplate how much you will give, please don't think that Emerson doesn't need your pledge anymore, or at least not as much as before. The fact is, even that $1 million gift, as amazing and as generous as it is not enough to keep Emerson afloat long-term if our pledges go down. I will be pledging the same amount as I did last year. I would give more if I could, and I hope that each of you, as you contemplate your pledge card this year, will remember that Emerson still needs your pledges and that every dollar still matters. And related to that, I wanted to be sure that everyone saw the announcement about the 2 listening sessions coming up this week on the topic of the final report of the Long Range Planning Task Force and about Emerson's financial future. These will happen on Tuesday at 7 p.m. by Zoom, and on Saturday, originally scheduled for 1 p.m., but I found out today that will conflict with the end-of-life planning session. So I'm planning to make that 11 o'clock on Saturday, and we'll send out another email to confirm. And now Charlie Ritz has a brief announcement.
For those of you who ordered popcorn from me a few services ago, that popcorn has arrived, so you can pick it up from me in the lobby after the service. And now, please enjoy our prelude as we begin the formal part of our service.
Good morning. We now transition into our sacred time together, a time of reverence, a time of attention, a time of intention. So I must invite you to join all of us in this time marked by the lighting of our chalice flame. And we invite Janet Dawson to come forward and light our chalice flame in the sanctuary. And I invite those of you at home to light a candle where you are, to join in spirit with us as we mark this sacred time with words, important words, that bring us to a time of collective intention. Thank you. Our chalice lighting words this month are from my colleague, Reverend Chris Rothbauer, who is currently serving as minister at the Horizon UU congregation in Carrollton, Texas. Prior to arriving at Horizon, Reverend Chris served congregations in Michigan and Alabama. Please join me in reading these words together as they appear on your screen. We gather together this morning because others came before us. Some have left examples for us to follow, others lessons for us to learn from. And the paradox is, we have left both pain and joy. We honor our ancestors this morning, not because they are perfect, but because without them, we'd not be here together, sharing our joy, our pain, our living, and our dying. Thank you.
Emerson is a beloved community of faith, reason, and affection. We welcome all to grow in mind and spirit as we build a better world. We do this by gathering to seek, learn, and grow, and in the course of our work, to promote love among each other, our congregation, and the wider community here in Houston. Whether you're here in the sanctuary or joining us virtually, we welcome you. No matter where you are in your personal spiritual journey, we invite you to live, learn, love, and grow with us. As a covenantal community, we aspire to promote love, fellowship, and social justice, as well as support for your personal growth. Please join me in our welcoming. The words are on the screen. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you find yourself on your life's journey, whichever your pronouns, whether you've walked in or rolled in or dialed in, whomever you love, you are welcome here. And now we have our presentation of This Week in Unitarian Universalist History with Richard Cummins.
Alejandra. Good morning. Well, for the week of October 7th through October 13th, there were many, many interesting entries, and I've picked out a few. In 1793, John Hancock, a Unitarian merchant, political leader, and signer of the Declaration of Independence, died at age 56. In 1866, the very first meeting of the National Conference of Unitarian Churches was held on this date in Syracuse, New York. On October 11th, in 1564, the anti-Trinitarian Martin Cellarius died in Basel, Switzerland at the age of 65. Considered the first self-proclaimed Unitarian, he was imprisoned in Germany for his beliefs. Cellarius is the author of several biblical and philosophical works, and he influenced both the Polish and the Transylvanian Unitarian movements. And lastly, in 1808, Frances Dana Barker Gage was born in Union, Ohio. She was a noted social reformer, writer, and public speaker for women's rights, temperance, and racial justice. As president of the Ohio Women's Rights Convention, that was 1851 to 1853, she refused to let men speak and ruled them out of order when they tried. She heard and recorded Sojourner Truth's famous speech, "Ain't I a Woman?" organized the first Women's Temperance Society, and wrote anti-slavery and temperance articles. In 1862, Gage and her daughter Mary went to South Carolina to help former slaves acquire housing, medical care, and education. Her 4 sons fought for the Union in the Civil War. After a stroke in 1867, Gage wrote children's books, novels, and poetry. She was a member of the Universalist Church for many years, but left it because it did not support many of her causes that she championed. She died on November 10th, 1884. Thank you. Back to you, Alejandra.
It is also important that we acknowledge that our history in this place is a shared and harmful one. Our congregation's buildings are situated on the home of the Karankawa and the Atakapa peoples, who were here for at least 2,000 years before European settlers arrived and very nearly brought about their end. May we recognize, uplift, and support Indigenous voices and communities in our work as a congregation. Each time we are gathered, we hear words from one of the 6 sources of Unitarian Universalism. Today's words come from Georgie Odell. Please join me in this responsive reading. The responses are on the screen, bolded and in italics. We need one another when we mourn and would be comforted.
We need one another when we are in trouble and afraid.
We need one another when we are in despair, in temptation, and need to be recalled to our best selves again.
We need one another when we would accomplish some great purpose and cannot do it alone.
We need one another in the hour of success, when we look for someone to share our triumphs.
We need one another in the hour of defeat, when with encouragement we might endure and stand again.
We need one another when we come to die and would have gentle hands prepare us for the journey.
All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us.
And now, with our chalices lit and our hearts and minds centered, we often celebrate just a little more by singing a hymn. You may stand if you are comfortable doing so, or you may stay seated, but please help us raise our voices and sing. Our opening hymn is number 1008 in the Teal hymnal, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. Each time we gather, we ask your help in fulfilling the church's mission. The success of this church and of the principles we support is made possible by the work of our members and friends and by your financial support. We honor that support by striving to live the mission of this place fully and wholeheartedly. Here at Emerson, this collection does not go to funding our work, which is funded through our pledges of financial support. This collection each week goes to fund the work of important partners of Emerson who, in our opinion, live out our Unitarian Universalist values in our community and in the world beyond. The act of giving our financial support is both a transformative spiritual act and one way we live our values. 75% of today's offering will go to our October recipient, Texas Environmental Justice Advocacy Services. Its goal is to promote environmental protection through education, policy development, community awareness, and legal action, because all people are entitled to live in a clean environment regardless of race or economic condition. The remaining 25% of today's offering will go to Interfaith Ministries Meals on Wheels, which provides thousands of meals every day to Houston's homebound seniors. You can go to our webpage for online giving, put cash or a check in our offering plates and box, or mail a check to the church. And I don't see any children here today, but if I'm missing any during the offering music, children who want to attend their RE class may follow the teachers to their classrooms.
Thank you for your generosity. In the world which is now shaken by so much loss and destruction, poet and essayist Adrienne Rich, in her words, points us to important truths. While the weight of what has been broken can feel overwhelming, healing doesn't rest in extraordinary hands alone. It lives in the quiet, persistent work of those who, despite all odds, work to rebuild the world, piece by piece, heart by heart. We should take some time this weekend to consider the question, what is ours to rebuild in the midst of all that has been lost? She wrote, "My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who, age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world." Let us reflect for a few moments on all that is wrong, all that is right, and what is within our power to repair. Words for our second reading today come from the Dhammapada, the collection of 423 verses which have been preserved as uttered by Gautama Buddha to his disciples. Love versus hate. Never does hatred cease by hating in return. Only through love can hatred come to an end. Victory breeds hatred. The conquered dwell in sorrow and resentment. Those who give up all thought of victory or defeat may be calm and live happily at peace. Let us overcome violence by gentleness. Let us overcome evil by good. Let us overcome the miserly by liberality and generosity. Let us overcome the liar by truth. Today's talk is punctuated, of course, by the fact that it has been the celebration of the Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, among practicing Jews throughout the world. Yesterday, however, was also the Million Woman March on Washington. Christian evangelists had demanded that women show up to reflect their commitment, their passion, their concern that this Christian nation might be overcome by the forces of darkness and evil and Satan. Wow. What a set of contrasts. I'll make just a few bold statements today, and you don't have to agree with me. But since I have the pulpit, I get to tell you what I think. Last week I spoke at the Thoreau congregation, and I emphasized the threat of white Christian nationalism because it's anti-democratic, perpetuates racism, and actually approves of political violence in our own time, in our own lives. It is consciousness raising that our Unitarian Universalists at the General Assembly in June did a final approval of our flower of values, which I will show, and there it is up there, where values of justice, interdependence, equity, generosity, pluralism, and transformation were brought forth as essentially our guiding values. Now, one could say that these are elaborations of the motto that we heard, many of us, as we were growing up, on a program starring George Reeves called Superman. The announcer, and then eventually Superman himself, quoted his values as truth, justice, and the American way. I understand recently that's been changed to truth and justice, or truth, justice, and a better tomorrow in the modern versions of Superman. But that's fictional, isn't it? No, actually, those are reflections of the values that were emphasized by two Jewish young men who decided that there needed to be a Superman coming out of their Jewish experience of America, in contrast to the Übermensch of Nietzsche that was being flouted by the powers of Nazis in Germany. Let me emphasize just a little bit these values that Unitarian Universalists have explicitly acknowledged and wish to lift up in our lives. In interdependence, we honor the interdependent web of all existence with reverence for the great web of life. And with humility, we acknowledge our place in it. We covenant to protect Earth and all beings from exploitation. We will create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect, mutuality and justice. We will work to repair harm and damaged relationships. Pluralism, we celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. Justice, we work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all can thrive. We covenant to do what we can to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions within our congregations, our association, and society at large. Transformation, we are always adapting to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically ourselves. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages. It's never complete and never perfect. Generosity, we cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope, and we covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, our presence, and our resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. Equity, we declare that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and resources to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. This is a whole complex of nurturance built around that central value of love. Now, the folks in the back, you can take the slide down if you'd like, because now I'm going to be doing the preaching part. Does it ever seem to you that you're living in a different country than your neighbors? Is your cousin's take on the election so far from your understanding that it's like she's from an alternate universe? Has your brother fallen so far down the rabbit hole of social media news, it's like he's speaking a different language? Well, it's kind of true. And George Lakoff, in his book, Moral Politics, and another book, Don't Think of an Elephant, has been about showing us how for over 40 years. George Lakoff is a retired professor of sociology at the University of California at Berkeley. And his point is in two words, so it's the précis of the next 17 minutes or so. Language matters. Our words form our thoughts, and language acts as a filter that we have to interpret, so each of us only sees a selective view of the world. By exploring how cognitive schemas and metaphors narrow our focus so that we literally can't see any other way, Lakoff has given us a paradigm explaining why people are irrational. Of course, he's explaining it in a sort of a rational way. But Lakoff explains that there isn't a paradox in the conservative stance of fighting to save the life of an unwanted baby before it's born, yet opposing programs that would save the life of wanted babies after they're born, via social programs, for example, to provide formula. To conservatives, it must be part of a coherent moral worldview. And Lakoff says liberals can scream all they like about conservatives being anti-science, but our own liberal perspectives are stilted too. The myth that vaccines might cause autism is common to many on the left. And many on the left are also guilty of denying the science of cognition, which Lakoff's books aim to correct. His work centered on one pair of models for conservative and liberal worldviews that explain why certain stands on certain issues go together, like gun control goes with social programs, goes with pro-choice, goes with environmentalism. It explains why puzzles for liberals are not puzzles for conservatives, and vice versa, and why topic choice, word choice, and forms of reasoning in conservative and liberal analysis are so divergent. And though the worldviews that he lifts up center on the two opposing models of the family that most of us may have heard about, but in the interest of clarity, I will elucidate once again. The paradigm is of a traditional nuclear family, with one parent, often a father, having primary responsibility for supporting and protecting the family, as well as the authority to set strict rules and to enforce those rules. The other parent, often the mother, has most of the day-to-day responsibility for the care of the house, raising the children, and upholding the partner's authority. Children must respect and obey their parents, and by doing so, they build character, self-discipline, and self-reliance. Love and nurturance, although must be present, can never outweigh parental authority as an expression of love. However, the liberal worldview centers on the very different ideal of family life, the nurturant parent, where love, empathy, and nurture are primary. Children become responsible, self-disciplined, and self-reliant through being cared for, being respected, and caring for others both in the family and the community. In this model, what children need to learn most is empathy for others and the capacity for nurturance. The maintenance of social ties, which cannot be done without strength, respect, self-discipline, and self-reliance that comes from being cared for. But policy debates are not matters of rational discussion on the basis of literal or objective categories. The categories that shape our debates are moral categories, defined in terms of these different family-based conceptions of morality, which give priority to different metaphors for morality. Not the matter of objective means, end rationality, or cost-benefit analysis, or effectiveness. It is not just a debate about any particular issue. The debate is about the right form of morality, and that comes down to the question of the right model for the nuclear family. In the conservative moral worldview, a model citizen, an ideal candidate for public office perhaps, are those who best fit a normative category for moral action. Those would be people who say that they have conservative values and act to support them, who seem to be self-disciplined and self-reliant, who uphold the morality of reward and punishment, who work to protect moral citizens, hang the rest of them, and who act in support of moral order as they define it. Those who best fit all those categories in this model are often successful, wealthy, and conservative businessmen who support a strong military and strict criminal justice system, who are against government regulation, and of course are against affirmative action. They are the people whom we should emulate and from whom we have nothing to fear because they deserve to be rewarded and respected. Many of those citizens who were the model conservatives fit the elaborate mythology to some degree or another. They have succeeded through hard work, have earned whatever they have through their own self-discipline, and deserve to keep what they have earned, all of it. Through their success and wealth, they have created jobs which they give to other citizens out of generosity. Simply by investing their money to maximize their earnings, they give those jobs to others and create wealth for society. Part of the myth about these people is that they are model citizens who have been given nothing by the government, who have made it completely on their own. Their American dream is that any honest, self-disciplined, hardworking person could do the same. So they would be the ideal Americans for the American dream. But of course, conservatives would have a demonology, Lakoff reminds us. Citizens from hell, anti-ideal prototypes, nightmare citizens, those who violate one or more of the conservative moral categories. The more categories they violate, the more demonic they are. And what are these categories? Category 1 demons, those who are against conservative values of strict parent morality. Feminists, there are none of those in this room. Gays and other deviants at the top of the list. Others are the advocates of multiculturalism, postmodern humanists. Oh, there's none of those here. Who deny the existence of absolute values. Egalitarians who are against moral authority, the moral order, and any other kind of hierarchy. Category 2 demons, those who lack self-discipline and have less self-reliance. Unwed mothers on welfare are high on that list, along with unemployed drug users whose drug habit has led to their being unable to support themselves, but also able-bodied people on welfare because they could work, but they aren't working. So they must be lazy and dependent. Category 3 demons, protectors of the public good like environmentalists, consumer advocates, advocates of affirmative action, advocates of universal health care, or those who want the government to constrain the business activities of the conservatives' model citizens. How dare the government have an antitrust division? Category 4 demons, those who oppose the way that the military and criminal justice systems have operated in the past. These would include anti-war protesters, advocates of prisoners' rights, opponents of police brutality, and others. Gun control advocates would also be high on this list. But abortion doctors may be the worst, since they directly kill the unborn. But category 5 demons would be advocates of equal rights for women, gays, non-whites, and ethnic Americans, because they work to upset the moral order of white Christian nationalism. The conservative heroes and demons are what they are for the deepest of reasons, because conservatism rests on a widespread, deeply entrenched, family-based, strict parent moral system. Liberals, however, you may not know any liberals, have a very different notion of what a model citizen might be because of their moral categories. The ideal moral liberal citizen would be socially responsible, empathetic, helping the disadvantaged, protecting those who need protection, promoting and exemplifying fulfillment in life, and being self-reliant, taking care of themselves so they can do all of that. Model liberal citizens would include socially responsible professionals, environmental consumer and minority rights advocates, union organizers, social workers who devote their lives to helping the poor and the elderly, peace advocates, educators, artists, and those in healing professions like nurses, doctors. You might see there's some clear cleavages here between those who are villains for the conservatives and heroes for the liberals. But there also is a rich liberal demonology. Category 1 demons for liberals would be the mean-spirited, selfish, and unfair, those who have little empathy and show no sense of social responsibility. Category 2 demons, those who would ignore, harm, or exploit the disadvantaged, including union-busting companies, large agricultural firms that exploit labor by exposing them to pesticides or paying poorly. Category 3, according to Lakoff's categories, would be those whose activities hurt people or hurt the world, hurt the environment. These would include both violent criminals and out-of-control police, polluters, those who make unsafe products or engage in consumer fraud, developers with no sense of ecology, and large companies that make excessive profit from mining, grazing, water, lumber subsidies by the government, or from manipulating politicians to get what they want. Category 4 demons for liberals would be those who are against public support of public education, of art, and of economic opportunity for those who are not yet able to be participating in the economy effectively. And the Category 5 demons would be those who are against the expansion of health care for the general public. It should come as no surprise that conservative models citizens are often liberal demons and vice versa. But what's this all about if you look at it from, 5,000 feet up? Lakoff emphasizes that progressives have bought into the myth that if they simply lay out the facts, conservatives will see the errors of their ways, and vice versa, because conservatives say it's self-evident that what's good for us is good for the world. The favorite saying of the president of General Motors is, what's good for General Motors is good for the country. But it's not that simple. If the facts clash with the framing of the recipient, whichever side you happen to be on, they will have almost no bearing. People vote and support political views based more on their values and their morals, and those often conflict with economic self-interest. Conservatives have understood this for decades and have often used it to craft their message and win many elections. But Lakoff's paradigm helps us in understanding both the conservative and the progressive mindsets, and how progressives might be more effective if they tailor their message more effectively. Lakoff said in his books, make no mistake, there is 25 to 30% block of conservatives that progressive will never win over, and vice versa. But with the effective use of framing, it could be done for that other 70%. Lakoff spells out what I would say we, based on our Unitarian Universalist values, as progressive could do at the family Thanksgiving table, and with our personal contacts to maybe win at least a few arguments and sway at least some opinions. And you know what those things are? There are three. The first is, don't use their language. Refuse to fall into their paradigm. Refuse to use their, what Lakoff called, framing. The second is something we take to heart if we're in real relationship, is to treat those who differ from us with respect. That's one of our Unitarian Universalist values too. And the third that he says, that I would recommend to anybody in any relationship, including neighbors, is try not to yell. Try not to lose your stuff as you're talking to somebody who just won't see it your way. Don't elevate your volume. Retreat to rationality that's within you, and try to find a way to see some commonality, to understand the context from which the person you're speaking with is actually thinking, or in many cases, what we're not thinking, what we believe in our heart of hearts, what we hold closest to ourselves. What are those values? What are the most important things to remember? And I would commend to your attention the center focus of the flower of Unitarian Universalist values, which is, of course, love. Thank you for your attention this morning.
Thank you, Reverend Dan. And now please join us in singing our closing hymn, which is number 1015 in the Teal hymnal, I Know I Can.
We are a Christian-based faith. We come from all the generations of people who held the value of community. The Jewish, our brothers and sisters who are Muslim, and the Christians. And we still have lessons to learn from faiths that have arisen in thousands and millennia of years that have had human society. But these words, from the words, I think, of Paul in the Bible, supposedly, from 1 Corinthians 16, are our benediction today. Keep alert. Stand firm in your faith. Be courageous. Be strong. But let all you do be done in love. Go forth from this place, knowing that there are a limited number of days for us to hold in our hands the gift of democracy and do what we can. Blessed be.